take it away. Thank you very much, Maria. Yes, indeed, it is I, Ailey Lodi, alongside the one known as Mani Devoody. I felt like we needed a cool intro there, but Maria did give us a pretty good one.
I'll take it.
You'll take it. Mani, you excited? We're kicking the round off with some alchemy today. Our two undefeated players, but there can only be one. Who's your money on today?
I really like the Grixis midrange deck. I think the players that chose to combine Fable of the Mirror Breaker with City Stalker Connoisseur just maybe one-up the format, so I really want to see how it's able to perform against this more controlling Hinata deck that has it built to go over top of decks.
Yeah, both of these deck lists are, you know, very much out of left field, I would say. We did suspect a little bit of a Hinata representation this weekend, but Grixis midrange, I would not have put my money on that for being a pretty darn good deck this weekend. So take a look here at our players' 4 top finishes for Jean-Emmanuel. Jim Davis is going to be looking to put a 1 where you see that 0 there. And yeah, as a fellow content creator, I sincerely hope that he's able to go all the way into the top 8. But I love both of these players, so don't make me pick.
Yeah, Jim certainly has the start here to add that 1 to his name, and I'm sure with this Grixis midrange deck, he's feeling pretty good about it. He had an unblemished record yesterday, and both of his decks look quite impressive. So I think Jim has to be feeling good to start off the second day.
Feeling good. Let's see if he can continue his winning ways as we take a look at the opening hand here for Jim Davis. Has all of his colors online and a pretty good curve to start things off. Perhaps would like to see a Graveyard Trespasser coming down on turn 3 just to get that aggressive start going, which this deck is very capable of. It is a mid-range deck, but boy, you can kill your opponents super quickly with it.
Yeah, you're missing a second black source for Sorin, which isn't ideal, but otherwise this hand has a nice curve. You have a Voltage Surge that you can combine with something like the Blood Token from City Stalker Connoisseur to try to take down a Hinata, so you're not really cold to the big bad creature from the Jeskai Hinata deck, and Rahilda is just an excellent early threat to really put pressure on these sorts of more controlling decks, so I think Jim has to be extremely happy with this hand.
I'd say so. Rahilda is a pretty rude card. Actually, this deck is just rude. Grixis has the reputation of being one of the ruder color combinations. You know, making you discard, stealing your stuff, killing your things. And Rahilda, if you don't like your deck or your hand's not that great, she could just, you know, let you start playing your opponent's cards.
Yeah, it really is the type of card that is just excellent against slower decks just because it is cheaply costed and your opponent has to do something. If they ever take a turn off and they allow it to turn to night and flip, it's just so terrifying to face. So it really is exactly what this sort of mid-range deck wants against slower decks.
All right. Jean-Emmanuel has made his decision. A keep here from Jim Davis, so let's get the show on the road. Kicking things off a deserted beach done for Jean-Emmanuel. There's a haunted ridge, so there's the double black that this hand was missing for Sorin the Mirthless.
Yeah, kicking things off with a Shipwreck Marsh, and Jim just has everything available to him now. Obviously would love to hit a 3-drop, either a Kaido Shizuki or those city Graveyard Trespassers that you mentioned earlier to fill that spot in the curve, but Jim's really not complaining, and Jean-Emmanuel, we aren't able to get a look at his hand. Now we are, but he agonized over this keep, and that's because if you look at it, there isn't much going on. Yes, there's 2 copies of Shatterskull Smashing, but they're not able to answer this Rahilda quite yet, and that means this is going to be a free hit coming in for Jim, who will be very happy about that.
Very happy indeed. Nothing done on the battlefield to stop Rahilda from making contact, and no removal, at least at this point, to get rid of this pesky werewolf. So let's see what Rahilda gets. Oh, a Hinata. Well, cool, sure.
Yeah, Jim can't cast it this turn, but Rahilda doesn't quite operate like other cards that we've seen in the past with this sort of ability where you can cast the card until end of turn. You can actually cast the card on any turn where you've attacked with a wolf or werewolf. So that means that in a future turn, maybe the next turn, if Jim gets an attack and makes it with this Rahilda Feral Outlaw alive, he'll be able to take the Hinata if he wants to.
So with the transition to nighttime, the Celestis is discarding the Shadow Skull Smashing, and there's an Expressive Iteration. Now, Jean-Emmanuel does have an answer for Rahilda, and being on the nighttime side, Feral Outlaw, that's double strike, so that's 2 more cards that Jim Davis could potentially steal here from Jean-Emmanuel. So is this a must-answer threat right now, or does Jean-Emmanuel still have some time?
Well, that's the thought process that Jean-Emmanuel is going through right now. Jim didn't play a 3-drop, so he didn't present a further threat. But Jean-Emmanuel taking this turn off while not having much in hand means that the next few turns will look pretty awkward for him. Especially, there is a temptation, I think, to want to hold up a card like Jawari Disruption going into Jim's 4th turn, knowing that cards like City Stalker Connoisseur exist, knowing that cards like Soren the Mirthless exist. So I think there's some temptation here for Jean-Emmanuel to just hold up the counterspell, even though he understands that it's going to mean he's going to fall further behind.
The turn gets passed back. Jawari Disruption available here to Jean-Emmanuel. And there is a 4th land in hand for Jim Davis, so let's see what his play will be. He's got plenty of options available to him. Did find that Graveyard Trespasser, which he would have loved to have gotten down on turn 3 there. There's a negate. Oh no. A negate, a Flame Blessed Bolt, and Hinata all hanging out in exile.
Yeah, taking that negate is really nice. We are approaching Jean-Emmanuel's 6th mana turn, which means that potentially a Hinata into Magma Opus is available. So Jim might be thinking that he wants to play City Stalker Connoisseur here to try to take that potential Magma Opus out of Jean-Emmanuel Depraz's hand. That would mean playing into 2 open mana, and Jim has to think that Jean-Emmanuel, he could have answered that Rahilda. He discarded the Shadow Skull Smashing to the Celestis last turn. So Jim has to think he didn't answer this Rahilda. Maybe it's because he wanted mana open, and or something like Jawari Disruption, and ultimately really wants to get that Magma Opus, plays into it, but he's still in a decent position.
This is a very nice draw here for Jean-Emmanuel. A much cheaper answer to Rahilda, Feral Outlaw, and Flame Blessed Bolt. As Goldspan Dragon's going to hit the battlefield and start accelerating the mana generation here for Jean-Emmanuel. As we'll see the follow-up land and the Flame Blessed Bolt take care of Rahilda. So we're going to need to find another wolf to get access to those cards, if that's even on Jim's mind.
Yeah, and 2 spells cast, so going back to daytime, which means the Celestis will trigger. And Jean-Emmanuel actually really in a decent position now, because he does still have that card draw spell in hand. If another City Stalker Connoisseur comes down, he gets the choice of what to discard between the 2 4-mana cards. So he can get rid of the Hinata, considering it's not doing much here if he so chooses. But the bigger thing is Jim doesn't currently have a good answer to this Goldspan Dragon. He'll need to make that blood token first to try to take it down with Voltage Surge.
Yeah, and we'll be able to get the blood token now. City Stalker Connoisseur hits the battlefield, and Jean-Emmanuel Depraz gets rid of the Unexpected Windfall. Here's an Abrade off the top of the library. Nice answer to the 3 toughness creature on the battlefield, if he wants to go that route.
I'm a little surprised Jean-Emmanuel got rid of the card advantage source in Unexpected Windfall, considering I don't think his hand is doing much, but perhaps thinking that Hinata as a 4/4 flyer is a good threat and does still have the Celestis to provide some further card selection. So maybe we'll just see Hinata brought out here to put on more pressure with the Goldspan Dragon.
Yep, I don't hate that. You know, these flyers get the game won and done very, very quickly. So Jean-Emmanuel just putting his foot on the gas here and trying to get this game over and done with, forcing Jim Davis to have an answer for both of these threats now.
Yeah, and we're going to get the cost reduction on the Abrade as well if Jean-Emmanuel wants to go for it now. But there isn't really any pressing need to do so, considering the Connoisseur isn't doing that much here against the 2 flyers.
Yeah, the Connoisseur is great against matchups where all the creatures are ground-based, like Naya Runes. So Jim, no reason to keep it back. On defense, gonna start swinging in, getting its own damage done. Now, how does he follow up here? Did draw Kaito Suzuki.
Jim does have a clean answer to the board from Jean-Emmanuel Depraz, has the power word kill for the Hinata, as
Hmm.
well as the voltage surge, plus the blood for the Goldspan Dragon. We are in alchemy, so Goldspan Dragon won't be making a treasure token when targeted by the voltage surge. So Jim might want to just take this turn, clean up the board, get that Goldspan Dragon off before anything bad can happen. Might be thinking about another Jawari disruption here. You do see him staring off, which is, if I had to guess, looking at the list and considering what do you have? Do I get more punished by passing the turn or trying to do this now, considering he's at 12 and he really wants to get this 4-power dragon off the board?
Yeah. All right. He's going to play it patiently. Send the turn back here to Jean-Emmanuel, and on the upkeep, he's going to fire off the voltage surge, sacrificing that blood token to deal 4 damage here to the Goldspan Dragon.
You see the fist pump as it resolves, as it, considering that Jean-Emmanuel hasn't really presented any other threats so far, making the board clear while having a handful of gas is exactly the position that Jim wants to be in.
Yeah. So advantage slipping slightly away here from Jean-Emmanuel Depraz, who's just going to let it go back to nighttime. The Celestis will draw and discard. There's a Disdainful Stroke. That's a very good draw here, considering that Sorin or Townraiser Tyrant could be coming down this turn.
Yeah, and it's really a question of Jean-Emmanuel potentially respecting Kaido here, considering there's 4 copies in Jim's deck and not allowing Connoisseur to attack, which I really like, because if Jim gets that attack off, I think he's much less likely to play one of these 4 drops, knowing that he just has a very free Kaido play. And now Jim might be tempted to play something like a Sorin or a Tyrant, and that would play directly into Jean-Emmanuel Depraz's Disdainful Stroke that he drew that turn.
Won't be a 4-drop this time around. It's going to be the Graveyard Glutton coming on down. 2 cards can be exiled from a graveyard. And it's going to be the 2 creatures, so nice little gain and drain there for Jim Davis. Spikefield Hazard is the draw. And Jean-Emmanuel is now looking to the Celestis for some answers as it's flipped back to daytime. There's a negate, another good answer to the threats in hand for Jim Davis, but there's still a big bad wolf on this battlefield.
Yeah, this is one of the cool play patterns with the Celestis when you are this sort of control deck, is when it's night, you can activate the Celestis, turn it back to day, get the trigger, and then just pass the turn because you haven't cast the spell, and it'll go back to nighttime. So you essentially get 2 triggers, 2 loots, and 2 points of life within a single turn cycle. But unfortunately, when your opponent has a werewolf on the battlefield, that's not great. And let us not forget, all the way back on turns 3 and 4, Rahilda got some attacks in, and there are some cards exiled that Rahilda doesn't need to be on the battlefield to cast. So now Jim Davis can say, well, I've got my own tools, but you know what? I'm going to use some of yours.
Yeah. That's a nice deck. Can I play it? It's going to get Disdainfully Stroked so that it's not lethal next turn for Jean-Emmanuel Depraz, who once again turns to the Celestis. Forsaken Crossroads, not what you want to see. A Goldspan Dragon would be nice, but it's gonna hurt to get this card down.
Jean-Emmanuel was on the play, unfortunately, so cannot untap Forsaken Crossroads. Could pay 3 life for Shadow Skull Smashing if he really wanted to get Goldspan Dragon down that turn, but that's a lot of life to pay, considering all you would have left is a negate, and you'd still be facing a Graveyard Trespasser, although it wouldn't flip. Jim is really feeling the strain of the land drops that he's missed, as he would love to be able to attack with this Glutton, have that negate available to him that Rahilda exiled way back in the day, and then be able to play something like a Fable of the Mirror Breaker with a negate up. As things stand, with that negate in Jean-Emmanuel Depraz's hand, if Jim chooses to go for a non-creature spell, that would be another turn of him being unable to develop something on this board.
Considering the Disdainful Strokes and the negates, do you think we could just see the Blood Tithe Harvester and Rahilda come on down?
Well, there is only 1 copy of Disdainful Stroke in Jean-Emmanuel Depraz's deck, so I think Jim recognizes that I can now more safely resolve my 4-drop creatures than I can my non-creature spells. There are also only 3 negates. 1 is in the graveyard, 1 is exiled by Jim, so it might be difficult for him to put Jean-Emmanuel Depraz on having the 3rd copy, but considering Jim has the board state, that isn't what he cares about right now anyways.
Mm-mm. So I believe Shadow Skull Smashing can be cast for 6 here to deal with both of these creatures.
It can. You would have to discard a card,
Yeah.
but you do have the treasure tokens available to you. And I think for Jean-Emmanuel Depraz, this is one of those situations where it's desperation and you just have to go for it. Get rid of the card. I would guess it has to be the negate here. You can't really put yourself in a position where you don't have something like a Goldspan Dragon or Expressive Iteration to try to get back into this game.
So Shadow Skull Smashing. With that lovely clause that says if it's 6, you get to do it twice. So both these creatures die. There goes the negate, like you mentioned, Marty. And Deserted Beach, it's gonna start bopping Jean-Emmanuel.
You gotta let it go.
Unless he sacrifices it, yeah.
Yeah, you can't really go down to 3 life. You're already in a pretty precarious position, and you'll be given the same choice again the next turn. Just preserve your life total. You still have 5 for Goldspan Dragon, so not the worst position, and you just have to hope that Jim isn't able to double spell here. Something like Blood Tithe Harvester plus Rahilda would actually be pretty rough for Jean-Emmanuel Depraz, considering he just used that Shadow Skull Smashing, and his hand isn't really full of interaction.
Certainly not at this point. So Jim's got a couple of options, like you mentioned. Sauron the Mirthless can dig through the top of the library and try and find that 5th land if that's what he wants to prioritize, but I'm kind of going with you on this one. Blood Tithe Harvester plus Rahilda seems like a pretty good bet, but while the shields are down, Sauron the Mirthless is going to hit the battlefield, and a 2/3 flyer joins the fray.
Yeah, I think in the position that Jim is in right now, he is sort of forced to put a threat onto the board every turn. You can't really go digging for cards because that's a free turn for Jean-Emmanuel Depraz to get back into the game that he's sort of behind in. So I like that Jim did make the Vampire token and will get an attack in with it here, but he's not able to clear off this Goldspan Dragon, and that makes Magma Opus live. So there is an avenue back into this game for Jean-Emmanuel Depraz. It's just not looking great yet.
Very precarious life total to be at here for Jean-Emmanuel, sitting at 3 to a healthy 19 from Jim Davis, who still has a hand full of gas. He hasn't found his land drops every turn, but his deck seems to do pretty well without them, as Rahilda wanted Cutthroat. Hits the battlefield as a Feral Outlaw, and Fable of the Mirror Breaker gets another threat down on the battlefield.
This is nice for Jean-Emmanuel Depraz as well. Jim hadn't cast 2 spells in the last few turns, but did it now, which means the Celestis triggers. Jean-Emmanuel gets a point of life and a loot, which means more options. And with this Goldspan Dragon attack, he will have the mana for Magma Opus, so that can actually stop the pressure next turn from Jim Davis, clearing off 2 of the creatures, as well as tapping the 3rd one, and potentially a land on the upkeep. So this isn't over quite yet.
Jean-Emmanuel fighting his way back into this matchup.
You see the upkeep stop set by Jean-Emmanuel Depraz. I would guess that the plan is to send 2 damage to the Shaman, 2 damage to Rahilda, and then tap the 1 blue source that Jim Davis has, as well as the Vampire token.
Here comes Magma Opus. So many things that this card does. It's an absolutely ridiculously powerful card, even more so with Hinata down. I bet Jean-Emmanuel would love to see that, but you called it exactly right, Monty.
Yeah, the flexibility of Magma Opus is what makes it so great with Hinata. Being able to target up to 6 things and make the insane spell that normally costs 8 mana cost only 2 is just ridiculously good. And, you know, I hate to say it, but I think Jean-Emmanuel Depraz might actually be favored in this game now.
I agree with you, and so does the advantage bar. Fable the Mirror Breaker, allowing Jim to discard 2 cards. Is it time to get rid of Kaito? Do we hang on to it? Well, let's keep digging. Aye, and there are the lands he was missing.
Yeah, and you see Jim shake of the head because he got rid of Kaido partially because he didn't have a blue source and he didn't want to gamble on finding one off the top of his deck. So he kept the Blightstep pathway, but unfortunately found two blue sources that are essentially not doing much anymore. We'll be able to discard a land to this blood token, but that's not really going to be enough considering Jean-Emmanuel has a lot of gas left for him and he's got the board covered.
Yeah, he does. 2/4/4s up against these vampires who do a decent job most of the time, but yeah, not looking very good right now. Ooh, and a Shadow Skull smashing. That could clear the way here for Jean-Emmanuel
That's
to
pretty
just start
good.
delivering the beatdowns.
That is pretty good. I don't know if there's a necessity to do it this turn, considering you sort of have the board covered. You would maybe want to save an answer for that Fable of the Mirror Breaker when it flips, but the temptation has to be there to clear off this board.
Oh yeah.
Just say, I have lethal, next turn you will have to chump block with that 2/2, so there isn't even great options left for you, and yeah, just get them off the board.
Yep. Away you go, small critters. Dragons and
Wow.
elementals coming through. So let's see what will the top of the deck yield for Jim Davis as blood token.
Land and
Lands.
land.
Aye.
Yeah, that's the look. That's the look from Jim. As this is just an insane game from Jean-Emmanuel Depraz, and I'm pretty sure he's in some level of disbelief here. I'm sure he'll want to cast this Expressive Iteration, try to find a removal spell for that flipped Fable just to get off the board and be able to attack for lethal. We may see the second Expressive Iteration cast here, but he's just so overwhelmingly ahead considering Jim has absolute air.
Yep. 2 cards in hand, though. Time to start bluffing. Let's have a look-see. There's an Abrade. Well, that'll get rid of this blocker on the battlefield. And that is going to be Jean-Emmanuel Depraz picking up a game that swung wildly back and forth between these two players. So kudos to him. Very unlucky for Jim, drawing nothing but lands at the end there. And this Abrade will take care of the reflection of Kiki-Jiki. In for 8 goes Jean-Emmanuel.
He is so good. He's you see the shake of the head like, all right, well, I got that one. And just so incredibly well played from Jean-Emmanuel Depraz. That was extremely impressive, though, considering he's our World Championship runner-up. I'm not surprised, but wow.
Yeah, Jean-Emmanuel just impresses me every single time. Now, we're going to jump back into that game very shortly, friends, or into that match. But I wanted to ask about the turning point. Where do you think it was in that game that Jean-Emmanuel just started to get the advantage back and really accelerate to the win?
Well, part of it was certainly the amount of threats that Jim was able to deploy. We saw the turn that Jean-Emmanuel Depraz was able to use that Shatterskull smashing for 6 on 2 targets and just clear off the board because Jim had been sort of starved for mana the past few turns and not able to develop out multiple threats. That Shatterskull smashing left him with an empty board, and that meant that Jean-Emmanuel Depraz was able to start snowballing because he suddenly had the upper hand and Jim wasn't able to catch up again.
All right, well, the players are sideboarding. Let's take a look at the decisions they make. And I just want to give a little shout out to Celestis there, because that life gain really kept Jean-Emmanuel from just being, dead.
Yeah, he definitely gained more than 4 life throughout the course of that game with the Celestis. So considering he ended the game at 4, that got the job done there.
Certainly did. Ooh, bringing in some spicy things from the sideboard. Brittle Blast is a nasty card in Alchemy. What else we got going on here?
Yeah, I'm a little surprised to see Jean-Emmanuel Depraz taking out his Abrades, considering a lot of the power of Jim's deck comes from the cheaper creatures like the Rahilda, like the Graveyard Trespasser, and like the Fable of the Mirror Breaker Shaman and the Reflection of Kiki-Jiki. So taking out some of the cheaper spot removal. And yeah, okay, I like this. We see the Flame Blessed Bolt and 2 copies of Abrade coming back in. I think he's definitely in the market for those. Valorous stance, not particularly great against this deck. And you see he's bringing in Smoldering Eggs, Memory Delusions. He's just becoming more of a control deck, just more removal, more answers, a few more diversified ways to win the game. And all of this just lines up really well against what Jim's brought.
Game number 2, let's go! Just a reminder, friends, if you're just joining us, both of these players are our 2 remaining undefeated competitors this weekend. But by the end of this match, there will only be 1. So let's take a look at this opening hand. Turn 1 Duress. Gotta love to see that.
Yeah, decent hand from Jim for sure. The power word kill, not particularly great, but being able to slow Jean-Emmanuel Depraz down and have a Graveyard Trespasser is probably too good to pass. You do have a red source in that Blightstep pathway as well. On the other side, Jean-Emmanuel Depraz, pretty atrocious hand, did have some spot removal, but no blue mana makes it really hard to keep. And yeah, you see the shake of the head. This is not looking much better. Double Magma Opus, double Shatter Skull Smashing is far too slow against a deck that you know will be packing Duresses as well.
Yeah, this is going to be rough for Jean-Emmanuel, but hey, he's fought back against tougher things, so whoops.
Take the land, get that Shatter Skull Smashing out of there, and just this is a brutal hand for Jim Davis to duress, as Jean-Emmanuel Depraz already bought him the Shatter Skull Smashing, and yeah, this is going to be a tough game. He's going to need some very good draws, and he's going to need Jim to stumble along the way.
Do you think there was any consideration to keep that first hand? I know there are only 2 red sources, but Cathartic Pyre may have been able to draw into things. It probably just would have gotten duress though, right?
Yeah, it's really tough. You know you're playing against a deck with discard spells, so in most situations you don't really want to be mulliganing. But when your hand is looking so rough that a single discard spell can disrupt it to that level, it can be a bit hard to justify the keep. And I think I like Jean-Emmanuel Depraz's decision to mulligan it. It's just unfortunate that this is your 6 and you can't really afford to go to 5.
Expressive Iteration, though, a nice draw for Jean-Emmanuel, so hopefully that'll find him some more gas for the tank. On the other side of things, Jim Davis draws a land for turn, so nothing really to do on turn 2. But turn 3, Graveyard Trespasser can get down on the battlefield and start getting those points of damage in.
Yeah, if there's a single card that you ask me that I would want to draw right after getting duress, it's Expressive Iteration. If there's...
okay, oof.
I don't think Jim can possibly take this 3rd turn off from casting Trespasser, especially knowing 3 of the 5 cards in Jean-Emmanuel Depraz's hand. It's just really unfortunate that he's going to get the bad news about this Expressive Iteration now, or just have his Trespasser removed by this Brittle Blast.
Oof, that was a bit of a skipped a heartbeat there for a second. I was like, oh no, don't take it. Expressive Iteration is such a good card in these sorts of archetypes. So let's see how Jean-Emmanuel wants to play this turn. Isn't going to fire off the Expressive Iteration, is going to keep up that Brittle Blast for this pesky glutton.
That's a really good draw. Jim is on his 4-mana turn and really wanted to make 4 mana worth of plays. Duress to clear the way, plus a Fable of the Mirror Breaker is exactly what he's looking for in that spot.
Oof, this is going to be pretty darn good turn here for Mr. Davis, as Duress is going to spy the Expressive Iteration and the Brittle Blast.
Yeah, this is an interesting choice from Jean-Emmanuel Depraz. If he allows the Duress to resolve, there's a decent chance that Jim is going to take the Brittle Blast. But if he uses the Brittle Blast here, then he's going to lose his Expressive Iteration and be left with nothing. So in both cases, there isn't a good outcome for him. It's a question of, do you want to bait Jim into taking this Brittle Blast? And Jean-Emmanuel says, yeah, I want this Expressive Iteration, so either you take it forcefully or you can have this Brittle Blast, and I can try to find a way back into this game. I love this play from Jean-Emmanuel.
Super heads up, forcing Jim to make the decision so that Jean-Emmanuel doesn't have to guaranteeably lose the Expressive Iteration, but Jim is going to get rid of the thing that finds more things. for Jean-Emmanuel, as Fable the Mirror Breaker is going to safely hit the battlefield, creating a little goblin shaman that makes some treasures for him.
And that's just the power of expressive iteration, and it's also the respect of Jim Davis for Jean-Emmanuel Depraz, because he understands that you want me to take this Brittle Blast. You didn't cast this Brittle Blast because you want me to take it, and I'm not going to play into your game plan. I'm going to plan for the next few turns. I'm taking your expressive iteration that can make this hand, which is honestly kind of a mess, into something that can potentially get you back in this game.
Long pause there on the end step. Is Brittle Blast going to get fired off now or later? As Jean-Emmanuel decides it's time. Let's get rid of Graveyard Glutton. Discard a land. Shadowskull Smashing is going to hit the bin. That's one threat down. Hey.
Oh my god.
Oh boy.
It's really unfortunate that Jim has the power word kill.
Oh, look at that smile. He knows.
Yeah, that could have been a huge draw. And as well with the City Stalker Connoisseur, he could just discard the Magma Opus instead. Yeah, just get rid of the land, keep Connoisseur and Power Word Kill. I would say that it's safer to just kill the Hinata this turn rather than potentially give Jean-Emmanuel Depraz a window to draw another Magma Opus. Yes, there's already one in the graveyard, so Connoisseur makes it so Jean-Emmanuel only has 2 left in the deck, but this is the way that you might lose this game. It's they miraculously draw another Magma Opus, and taking that option off the table is just maximizing win percentage. This is just Jim being completely tuned into the game, and I've loved every decision he's made this game.
Yeah, he's been playing excellently this weekend, and his undefeated record states so. And a very good draw here for Jean-Emmanuel, though, able to protect this Magma Opus. If he ever gets enough mana to cast it, it could help him get back into this game, but for now it's safe. But the top of the deck really needs to be kind to him.
Yeah, and you see him thinking about actually discarding this Magma Opus for treasure, thinking about the ways to get back into this game. One of them is potentially trying to find a Shadowskull Smashing to answer this Reflection of Kiki-Jiki, for which he would need another red source, which is part of that consideration, because if Jim Davis has something like a City Stalker Connoisseur or that Town Raiser Tyrant that we see in his hand, it's time to copy dragons, it's time to raise these towns, and I don't think this game is going to last very long because Jean-Emmanuel does not have the life total or the mana to work with, and yeah, this game is just over.
Kiki-Jiki, well, the reflection thereof. It's gonna make a copy, and Jean-Emmanuel sees the writing on the wall, so we're gonna go to a game number 3 here. These players are not making it easy for each other to continue their undefeated streak this weekend.
Yeah, this is exactly the level of play that I would expect from 2 players of their caliber, sitting at 7-0. This has been a blast to watch, and hopefully for Jean-Emmanuel Depraz gets a sort of decent hand here in this 3rd game, because those mulligans were pretty brutal that game.
Yeah, that was super rough. So please, dear game, could we have 2 great opening hands and an excellent game between these players? Now watch, I probably jinxed it, haven't I? Well, that looks good.
Not
That's
so
fine.
much. This hand looks decent. It is lacking. It doesn't have spot removal, for example. There's a decent chance you're going to be forced to use that Jwari Disruption as a land. But all in all, this hand gives you a lot of good draws, and one of the most important things, considering you're on the play, is by playing that Jwari Disruption on turn 1, Jean-Emmanuel Depraz makes his hand duress-proof. So if Jim Davis either aggressively mulligans for a duress, because you see him thinking about a hand that has 2 3-drops, 2 4-drops, and thinking, this might be too slow. I might need some form of disruption. So if he mulligans to a duress and then duresses Jean-Emmanuel Depraz and finds nothing, that's essentially a mulligan to 5 on the spot, and that would be devastating for Jim. So this is going to be a hard choice for Jim to think about this keep, and Jean-Emmanuel Depraz, his hand lines up really well right now.
Don't do it, Jim. You got your colors. You got... No!
Oh my god.
Jim, why?
Okay, will he play the Jwari Disruption? Oh. Yes. Okay, I'm... Ailey, my hand is hovering over the advantage bar.
Okay.
If this Jwari Disruption gets played, this is being slammed.
Oh
my god.
There you go, Jean-Emmanuel.
Oh no. Oh no. Oh, no, 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 no.
Have to pay respects to that duress, friends.
Oh, look at that face. Oh, I feel Jim Davis's pain right now. You mulligan to this duress. You had a great hand to play a mid-range game against this hand, and instead,
I mean, he's still got a good hand.
He does, but he has two creatures that are getting blanked by those smoldering eggs. This is a much harder game for Jim Davis to play now.
Oh, no. Oh man, I love watching the reactions. Just saw a wry little smile from Jean-Emmanuel's going like, hey, gotcha.
Yeah, and Jim is a streamer, right? Jim is a content creator, and you definitely see the expressiveness. You see the entertainer in him, and just the emotions all come out. And it's just a blast to watch, even when it may not feel like a blast for him.
Oh, onwards we go. Rahilda wanted Cutthroat down on the battlefield. And Forsaken Crossroads, gonna do some more scrying here for Jean-Emmanuel, sending that card to the bottom, and the Smoldering Eggs ready to rock and roll here.
Now, Jim does still have a great hand to follow this up. Could attack with the Rahilda and just get Kaido Shizuki down, start drawing cards, and that's a type of engine that works really well against this slower hand from Jean-Emmanuel Depraz. As we see, and as Jim is aware of, there's no interaction in that hand other than the potential one unknown card that Jean-Emmanuel Depraz is holding. So he can develop this board at least a bit further here. But Jean-Emmanuel is in a position where his deck top decks really well. There's a lot of good spells here, and if he was to draw a Magma Opus, it would just be completely devastating.
Yeah, especially with double Hinata in hand. So let's see what the follow-up here is gonna be. I like the idea of drawing some extra cards here of Kaito Shizuki. Fable the Mirrorbreaker is very powerful, but without any real reason to get it down right now, you know, no ridiculous creature on the battlefield, no real need to draw and discard, so let's go Kaito.
The idea for Fable is neat in that, yes, you're going to get the same sort of card selection abilities that Kaido is able to offer you with that looting effect on the second chapter. But unfortunately, the Shaman not being able to attack into Hinata unless you draw a removal spell would be really tough for Jim. So I like the choice to go with Kaido, and he's going to need an answer to this Hinata, otherwise he doesn't have good attacks here, and that gives Jean-Emmanuel the time that he needs to just take this game to another level.
Yeah. Ooh, Townraiser Tyrant, that is a very good blocker for the Hinata, which could clear out Kaito Shizuki.
Yeah, we do see the Goldspan Dragon in hand as well. Jim doesn't know about that, but Jean-Emmanuel Depraz does actually have two flying attackers for the next turn. So in a great position here, and Townraiser Tyrant can come down to block one, but certainly not answering all the threats that Jean-Emmanuel has.
One cool thing that could potentially help Jim Davis out in this situation is it takes a little time to do, but Fable the Mirrorbreaker, copying a Blood Tithe Harvester once Chapter 3 is flipped, gets you that hasty threat. You'll have 2 blood tokens on the battlefield, and that will get rid of the 4 toughness flyers.
Yeah, that one of the many cool engines in this mid-range deck. You are if you have the time, you are certainly able to clear off all of the potential creatures that can come out from your opponent, but time is the big factor here, as I expect Jean-Emmanuel Depraz may just be tempted to slam a Goldspan Dragon on this board and send both either a Kaido or just Jim's face, though I would guess Kaido, considering the way you let Jim back into this game is with cards.
Did he name red on both of his crossroads?
I believe so.
Okay.
I believe the second was played when he already had the Goldspan Dragon in hand, so there is the recognition that he needed a second red source. I would be surprised if they aren't both on red.
Big thanks here for Jean-Emmanuel, who found a Cathartic Pyre. So, an answer to one of these creatures on the battlefield, the Rahilda. Or does he want to just get some looting done? Let's see.
Notably, Jim knows that there's a second copy of Hinata Dawn Crowned in Jean-Emmanuel's hand, so knowing that by making this block he would just be allowing Jean-Emmanuel to play a second Hinata, he's not aware of the Goldspan Dragon, so he doesn't know that Jean-Emmanuel Depraz has a good threat to deploy regardless. And one of the benefits of doing this here is Jean-Emmanuel, if Jim doesn't block, can still use the Cathartic Pyre post-combat.
Yeah, which would be ideal here for Jean-Emmanuel. Keep the creature alive, get the Planeswalker dead.
Yeah, Cathartic Pyre, part of the sort of new school of red removal spells that deal damage to creatures or planeswalkers, which I think has just been a really positive change, allowing red decks to have another avenue of combining creature attacks with damage to clear off planeswalkers without needing to print burn spells that go to any target.
A really nice turn here for Jean-Emmanuel. He saw the head nod after no blocks from Jim Davis. So let's see. Do we fire it off now?
Yeah, it looks like Crossroads is on red as the Cathartic Pyre is castable. So I think Jean-Emmanuel Depraz will want to get this Kaido off the board, though I'm not sure what the timing for that. Oh, Ailey, can we do it twice in one game?
Don't wait. I mean, yes, of course you can.
Oh, this would just be so sweet for Jean-Emmanuel Depraz if he's able to use Cathartic Fire in response to a duress. Or just mid-combat before Jim Davis is able to go to his post-combat main phase and activate Kaido Shizuki.
Yeah, because definitely wants to get a card off of this creature attack, so no reason to do it pre-combat. What is he worried about?
I think Jean-Emmanuel is thinking whether he wants to block with a Smoldering Egg on the Rahilda or two Smoldering Eggs. No real reason to block with two, and it's just a matter of whether he thinks Jim is able to clear off an egg here, whether the 2 damage will matter, etc.
Okay, so Kaito does get a card post-combat, and Duress considered there momentarily for Jim. Is that how he wants to spend his turn?
Yeah, I would be really surprised if Jim doesn't want to fire off this duress here. And it will ultimately force the hand of Jean-Emmanuel Depraz, who seems to be saving this Cathartic Fire for something else. He doesn't seem particularly wanting to fire it off at Kaido, though. I think at this point, he might not just care about the Planeswalker anymore, considering he has the Hinata and the Goldspan Dragon to pressure it down in the air. So thinking the Planeswalker is gone anyways. And that's, twice in one game.
Jim. But on the plus side, that did give him the information he needed to hold on to this disdainful stroke and prevent good old Goldspan Dragon from landing.
Yeah, it's good. It's definitely good. I would say the Jim is still in an okay position. The big problem being that he's facing down a Hinata, and once he answers it, there's a backup Hinata in the hand.
Yeah. Speaking of backups, here comes Kaito Shizuki number 2. Townraiser Tyrant gonna swing in here, take Jean-Emmanuel down to 8, and we'll see the follow-up Planeswalker to get another card into hand.
Yeah, and Jim is putting on a lot of great pressure right now. Voltage Surge can be combined with that Blood Tithe Harvester, specifically the Blood Token, to kill off this Hinata. So with a land drawn, this is actually looking pretty good for Jim Davis now. One of Jean-Emmanuel Depraz's lands is burning, so he'll have to make a call on that because he can't really afford to keep taking damage at this point. If he just passes with this Hinata, hoping to use it as a blocker, then Jim Davis has that removal spell, and Jean-Emmanuel Depraz is going to go down to 4 life here if Jim Davis goes for it.
Draw step, light step pathway for Jim Davis. Has the voltage surge, so has an answer for the blocker right now. No reason to attack for Jean-Emmanuel last turn as Kaito was phased out.
Notably, there is a negate for Jean-Emmanuel Depraz, so that will actually answer the Voltage Surge, which is good, allowing him to have a block and trade with the Town Raiser Tyrant. So not as bad of a position for Jean-Emmanuel Depraz as I thought. But considering Jim has the board right now, he still has a Planeswalker, he has a Fable of the Mirror Breaker, and Den of the Bugbear as backup threats. It's still not looking great for JED at the moment.
So negate does take care of the voltage surge. Fable of the Mirror Breaker can come down now for Jim Davis.
And this is one of the non-bows between Hinata and Smoldering Egg. Smoldering Egg doesn't care about the mana cost of the spells you cast so much as the mana you pay for them. So Hinata being on the battlefield, reducing the cost of spells you cast, means that your eggs are getting less counters. So where these eggs would have 4 counters on them if Hinata wasn't on the battlefield, instead they only have 2, which puts them that much further away from flipping potentially.
So they're hard-boiled eggs, is what you're telling me, right? They gotta stay in the pot a little longer.
Yeah, basically.
Alright, let's get some unblockable threats down on the battlefield. Kaito going to make a ninja, and Fable the Mirror Breaker hits the battlefield too, creating that goblin. Spikefield Hazard, a really good answer here for the unblockable threat.
Yeah, but
Is
it's
there
not a
just
magma
too much
opus.
pressure? Yeah.
I think that's really what JD needs right now is a magma opus, as Jim has just gone further and further ahead in this game thanks to just having these mid-range threats that provide you card advantage as well. Being able to deploy multiple Kaidos and having Fable of the Mirror Breaker has just had him inching over this line more and more, and Jean-Emmanuel just hasn't found any sort of card advantage.
No, he hasn't, unfortunately, for the Frenchman. So, combat time. I'm guessing we're just going to see the big red button push for Jim Davis and swing with everything, including the Den of the Bugbear, perhaps?
It's really going to depend on what the draws are from this Fable of the Mirror Breaker, considering Jim Davis is going to get the draw first turn and then the second chapter, giving him up to 2 more cards to work with. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a play from Jean-Emmanuel Depraz to just replay the other Hinata in his hand after clearing off the Kaido, just recognizing that I need to take some action here. I can't deal with you having this many cards. So this is a you keep your dragon or you keep your Kaido. Either way, I'm going to replay a Hinata probably.
Yep.
You don't love to be in this position, but it's pretty rough either way here.
Yeah. Hinata number 2 does need to come down, get on blocking duty here for Jean-Emmanuel. There's a Blood Tithe Harvester, number 2 being drawn, on Fable of the Mirror Breaker, Chapter 2 triggers. Let's see if both of these get binned.
I wouldn't be surprised to just see them both go here from Jim.
Yeah. I don't think Blood Tithe Harvester is going to be doing any sacrificing.
You do have the Blood Tithe Harvester in play if you want to be able to sacrifice something immediately, but with no blood tokens to work with and just the one coming from the new Harvester, that's not really enough to make an impact. So Jim thinking about what cards do I have in my deck that make an impact here? What sort of clock am I on? Do I feel the pressure to discard a card that does something to try to go for the win this turn, rather than make sure that I have gas for potential future turns, because the game might not end this turn. It probably won't end this turn, right?
Ooh, okay. I love Jim's facial expressions.
Currently, no artifacts. After attack with that shaman from the Fable, that's a treasure token. That you can sack to Voltage Surge. This Hinata is not blocking. That was a big draw. And you see Jean-Emmanuel Depraz, he knows the only pause here, the only thing has changed after this attack is that treasure token was made, which means my Hinata is not long for this world. I don't have a backup Hinata. My eggs are forever away from flipping, and I'm going down to potentially 4 life here by using the Spikefield Hazard on the ninja token, blocking both creatures, and facing down a den, facing down 3 creatures on the battlefield, a Fable about to flip, and doesn't even know about the Kaido that is going to come down post-combat. I think this game is pretty well and truly over, Ailey.
It is all coming up Jim at this point as Kaito Shizuki hits the battlefield. Let's draw another card. Do or die time for Jean-Emmanuel, and I'm thinking it's gonna be the latter in this respect.
Yeah, unfortunately for Jean-Emmanuel Depraz, the 4-mana spells that he might want to try to flip these eggs, Unexpected Windfall, he doesn't have a card in hand to discard to it, so he can't cast that. Memory Deluge, he doesn't have double blue, so he can't cast that. So some of the cards that you would say, okay, 4 mana, add nets me cards. I would be able to flip these eggs and cast the spell afterwards. That might be good enough, but they're not there, and a Braid doesn't deal enough damage. It's over, Ailey. Jim Davis is going to be our lone undefeated player after 8 rounds of the Neon Dynasty Championship.
Ooh, that's gonna feel so good. There's the good game and the concession, and you can see how much retaining that undefeated streak means to Jim Davis. Congratulations, friend. 8-0.